Jacques Constu once said, "Water and air, the two essential fluids on which all life depends on, have become global trash cans." I bet most of you have probably heard about the turtle crisis, where they get covered up in plastic and then they have a lot of health effects afterwards. Or maybe you've even heard of the famous Dawn soap with like ducks in it when they get oil on them. This is because of water pollution. Water pollution is basically when a body of water becomes contaminated. According to Thought Co., the contamination could be caused by physical debris such as plastic or chemicals such as a runoff. So when it runs from one body of water to the next. None of these effects can be taken care of until we as humans understand that we're doing bad things to our water, which is causing the water pollution. These three things include wildlife, health, human health, and the crop production. So let's first talk about wildlife health. Chemical contaminants is a big one. Help Save Nature says chemical contaminants lead to sickness and death of animals due to inability to adapt to changed water temperatures, tides, and exposure to predators. Dumping trash is another big thing, like I said, when we had the plastic that was hurting the turtles in the oceans. Help Save Nature says more water-dwelling animals tend to suffocate or drown on being trapped in that plastic or that trash. Excess of nutrients. Help Save Nature also says that excess of nutrients such as nitrogen leads to increased growth of algae production, which poisons fish or animals that feed on them because it's an overproduction. Now that we know how water pollution affects wildlife, let's look at how it affects us as humans. Untreated water. The World Count says at the minimum you will get a stomach ache. Waterborne diseases account for 3 million deaths a year, such as malaria, jaundice, and typhoid. Chemicals is another big thing that people dump into our oceans or even little bodies of water. These three things are pesticides, nitrates, and lead. Pesticides damage the nervous system because of the carbonate. Nitrates restrict the amount of oxygen to the brain, and then lead can accumulate in the body and damage the central nervous system because we're not really supposed to have that much lead in there. Now that we know about the wildlife and human, let's talk about how the water pollution affects crop production, which is ultimately how we get our food. Foliage and bark damage from acid rain. Acid rain contains sulfuric and nitric acid, which can damage tree leaves and bark and hurt fine root hairs that absorb the H2O that gets it through the rest of the tree or flower or such. Photosynthesis issues is another thing. When H2O is polluted, the capacity of the H2O to dissolve the gases, such as carbon dioxide, is negatively affected because plants need photosynthesis for survival, according to sciencing.com. Lastly, there's soil problems. Soil is obviously the nourishing nutrients that helps get plants and trees what they need. So the polluted water in the ground washes the essential nutrients in plants out of the soil. So it's taking the nutrients out of the soil. This causes ions such as iron, magnesium, and calcium to just wash away. So it's not getting into our food source anymore, which ultimately doesn't give the nutrients that we or wildlife needs. So now that we've talked about all these, water crisis is a serious problem today because it does affect wildlife, humans, and how we get our food with crop production. You don't have to take a stand today, but since you've heard these effects, if you want to, there's a couple of ways that you can prevent water pollution from happening. The first is don't ever pollute our water with anything. 2 is if you ever see somebody doing it, just report it to authorities or tell them yourself, hey, these are the reasons why you shouldn't be doing this. And 3, never put chemicals into a drainage system, even when you're at a sink or anything. So those are mostly the biggest things that you can do to take a stand and prevent water pollution from happening, because ultimately water is vital to everything on this earth. So take the stand today and stop water pollution.